So I've been recently diving back into some more fonts and looking at kind of how my YouTube thumbnails were kind of set up and seeing if there's anything that I could do to adjust them or make any changes or that kind of thing. And while I was looking through that, I came up with an idea to do a quick video about the 5 sans-serif fonts that every creative should have in their arsenal. And just as a quick disclaimer, all the examples I'll be showing in this video are either of the bold or the heavyweight persuasion. And I just used that because I was looking for examples to see how things would look in thumbnails for YouTube. So first of all, let's take a look at Helvetica. Developed in 1957 by Swiss typeface designer Max Meininger, Helvetica is a neo-grotesque design influenced by the famous 19th century typeface Accidens Grotesque and other German and Swiss designs. Its use became a hallmark of the international typographic style that emerged from the work of Swiss designers in the 1950s and 60s, becoming one of the most popular typefaces of the mid-20th century. Meininger set out to create a neutral typeface that had great clarity, no intrinsic meaning in its form, and could be used on a wide variety of signage. Let's take a look at some examples of Helvetica in branding and logos and that kind of thing. So you can see 3M, 2K Games, A&E, Adult Swim, American Airlines, American Apparel. I mean, just looking at this, it's the list is just insurmountable. CBS Programming, Crate and Barrel, CVS Pharmacy. I mean, the list just keeps on going on. Epson, Jeep, LG, well, there you go, Motorola, Nestle, MBA, Panasonic, Sanyo, Sears, Staples. It says Subway, but I don't know. It's the, I don't know, maybe the S just doesn't feel like it's Helvetica to me. Suzuki, Target, the North Face, Verizon, WhatsApp. As you can see, I mean, these are just companies as of right now that are using Helvetica. Next, I want to showcase FF Meta, a humanist sans-serif typeface designed by German typographer Erich Spiekermann and released in 1991. According to Spiekermann, FF Meta was intended to be a complete antithesis of Helvetica, which he found boring and bland. Originating from an unused commission for the German Federal Post Office, throughout the 1990s, FF Meta was embraced by the international design community, with Spiekermann and E.M. Ginger writing that it had been dubiously praised as the Helvetica of the 1990s. Now, I wasn't able to find as robust of examples for FF Meta on the website and kind of a curated list like I was with some of these other typefaces, but this website is showing various uses over in Europe, and it looks like it's quite substantial over across the pond of various usages that they saw. Now, as far as here stateside, what we would be used to seeing is it's the official typeface for the Mozilla company, and with Firefox, of course, that comes without saying. And it's also the typeface for Make America Great Again, people. So, yeah, there you go. Donald Trump is all in on the Meta bandwagon. It's also the typeface for the Weather Channel as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Third, and the oldest in the list, Franklin Gothic, is a typeface that was released in 1902 by Morris Fuller Benton at American Type Founders. Franklin Gothic is a set of solid designs particularly suitable for display and trade use such as headlines rather than for extended text. While ITC Franklin Gothic is the most common release, it has been criticized for modifying the structure of the family considerably. ATF Franklin Gothic is the authentic original and should be sought out instead. Looking here, we have Museum of Modern Art, Bank of America, Starbucks, Run DMC, not pictured here, but Ramones, Major League Baseball, Showtime. I remember reading something about Lady Gaga using it in some of her stuff. The Rocky Balboa movie poster. It's also not listed here, but the Logan, Wolverine, Logan, that movie poster used Franklin Gothic. The Microsoft logo at one point used Franklin Gothic. I think right now it's Helvetica, but during the Windows 95, Windows 98 days, they were using Franklin Gothic. Meijer, the grocery store. Now, the thing I want to say about Franklin Gothic is I read on the internet, somebody stated that Franklin Gothic is the blue jeans of sans-serif typeface. And it's pretty much true, because it's just this really bold, kind of classic typeface that you can use. Now, I want to take a short moment to make a quick point that when it comes to graphic design, I see Helvetica used a lot, as far as with like in music. If you look at most notably concert flyers, I see concert flyers all the time using Helvetica. And professional wrestling, WWE uses Helvetica so much, it's nauseating at times. In video games, you see a lot of first-person shooters and other logos and that kind of thing done with Helvetica. And Helvetica is fine as far as a sans-serif font. I mean, if we look, here at this example that I just laid out, the alphabet, and it's fine. It's just, this is bold, so it's just a nice, or I'm sorry, this is bold. So it's just a nice, slab of text, But I would say that if you're doing things that require much more emphasis, strength, especially like first-person shooters, heavy metal, punk rock, something that's has a lot of angst to it, or something like that. And if you're looking for just a clean sans-serif font, I would say to go with Franklin Gothic. So I'll go ahead and add this, and we can compare it, look a little bit. And if you look at the C, it's not as uniform as this. So the C is a little less clean. If you look at the J, this J, it just looks really robotic, almost. It's just a J. But the way that the Franklin Gothic J looks, it's got a little bit more humanity to it, a little bit more personality to it. And also with the S. The S here, I mean, it's basically just completely squared off. We do this, and it's squared off. Whereas with this S, you can see it's wider in the middle. It gets a little bit narrow to the ends. I mean, it's got more, again, it's got more humanity to it. And another thing that I think is interesting about Franklin Gothic is these strokes are just ever so lighter than these strokes. So like with the V, with the X, with the M, things like that, with the U, this one is ever so slightly thinner than this one. I think that's kind of an interesting little piece of personality. With the A, this stroke is thinner than this stroke. But with Helvetica, everything is basically completely symmetrical. The C, symmetrical. The E, symmetrical. The H, symmetrical. The M, symmetrical. All these things are symmetrical. And so that's why I think Franklin Gothic is a little bit cooler to use when it comes to things like this, is because it's less symmetrical. And another thing is, if we're looking at like the P is just like this circle, the Q is a circle. Well, it's not really a circle, it's an oval, but B is an oval, that kind of thing. I thought it was interesting with Franklin Gothic, if we really zoom in, how they're still keeping this squared off part of, with like the D, and with the B, you still have this squared off part. With the A, you still have this nice squared off part. So I thought that was kind of interesting. However, if you're going for something that's a little bit more clean and a little bit more modern, I think Helvetica is fine. Like with this game 5 Dates, I thought it was kind of interesting that they had the logo in lowercase Helvetica, and it just looks really, really nice, really, really clean. And it really speaks to, I mean, the entire design of the whole packaging is all Helvetica. But I think that the fact that they're using lowercase kind of even makes it a little bit more personable. So the fact that they went with all lowercase kind of is a little bit more inviting. But as I said, I mean, if you're doing YouTube thumbnails, I think Franklin Gothic is kind of the better choice to do than Helvetica, because it has just a touch bit more, it's just less predictable is all. Up next is Gotham, which is a geometric sans-serif typeface designed by American type designer Tobias Frere-Jones and released in 2000. The inspiration for the typeface came from time spent walking block by block through Manhattan with a camera to find source material, and he based the font on the lettering seen in older buildings, especially the sign on the 8th Avenue facade of the Port Authority bus terminal. Reviews of Gotham focus on its identity as something both American and specific to New York City. Similarly, another typeface, Metropolis, is an open-source clone of Gotham designed by Chris Simpson. almost identical with a few minor exceptions. If you want the look and feel of Gotham without the licensing, Metropolis is available at no cost or agreement. Okay, so I wanted to take a look and see what all logos and branding use the Gotham typeface. And as we look here, we have AMC Networks, we have American Heroes channel, Chipotle uses it, Citrion uses it, DC Comics, Feeding America, HTML5, well that's interesting, Martini, TGI Fridays. So it's a newer font, so it's not as robust, but it seems like the past 10 years that Gotham is basically becoming the Helvetica of this generation. It's so ubiquitous. And the very first major introduction that the world got to Gotham was with the Obama campaign. All of his campaigning stuff was done in Gotham. And everybody in the political sphere looks at that as that was an incredibly brilliant, bright move by whoever came up with the look and feel of his campaign, because that typeface just kind of evoked a piece of familiarity and a piece of trust. And a lot of people feel like it was basically that typeface in and of itself that really helped kind of have him communicate better with the audience. Lastly, let's look at Mr. Eaves, and most prominently the modern subset. From 2009, this is the newest typeface of all the ones mentioned. The origin is with Mrs. Eaves, a transitional serif typeface designed by Zuzano Lico in 1996. A reinterpretation of Baskerville, Mrs. Eaves has a near vertical stress, departing from the old style model. In 2009, Mr. Eaves, a sans-serif accommodation, was based on the proportions of Mrs. Eaves, but Lico took some liberty with its design. One of the main concerns was to avoid creating a typeface that looked like it simply had its serifs cut off. The modern family provides an overall less humanistic look, with simpler, more geometric-looking shapes, most notably in the squared-off terminals and symmetric lowercase counters. This family has moved furthest from its roots, yet still contains some of Mrs. Eaves' DNA. Since this typeface is only 11 years old, it hasn't really achieved much widespread use as of yet. The only thing I was able to find in fonts in use based on Mr. Eaves' Modern was this makeup self-care company. And it's not in their logo, but it's in their packaging. Like, where was it? Here we go. Like with this, all this, Mr. Eaves Modern. All this, Mr. Eaves Modern. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I also noticed that it was also used in a lot of campaign mailers with the 2020 campaign. And here's one that I remember getting in the mail. I was like, that's really clean font. And I did some analysis, and it came up that it was also a Mr. Eaves mod. So we come over here and just kind of compare Gotham up at the top versus Mr. Eaves at the bottom. We can see like with the J, it's much more kind of like Helvetica. Whereas Mr. Eaves, the J is much more kind of like how Franklin Gothic was. But when we look at the lowercase letters were really just goes completely different. The ascenders are really, really tall, whereas with Gotham, not so much. And the descenders also come really far down, which Gotham, not so much. And what I like about the A is it's not a two-story A, it's just a single A, and I think that's kind of cool. Out of all the sans-serif fonts I mentioned today, Mr. Eaves is the only one that has a single-story A. And the weirdest thing is the T, especially when you put this T next to like an I or an H, it looks kind of weird how it's sitting there. It doesn't quite reach that height. But I think that's kind of interesting to have that personality, you know, with the letter form and that kind of thing. Okay, so I hope you learned something from this video. I'm not necessarily saying that everybody has to have all the fonts from these typefaces or you have to use them, but it's at least a good starting point if you have at least one font from each of these typefaces to use and mess around with. That can give you a good launching pad to start to kind of decide, well, maybe I might want something that looks a little bit different here, something that looks a little bit different there. But at least with these 5 main typefaces, this is something to really get you started, and then you can get a little bit more exploratory after this. But yeah, so thanks for watching and peace out.